I think at the time that was true, absolutely.
And now?
Now, I think when he went to Washington in July and he realized what was required of him, he felt, number one, that he had to face his people, his regime, which included the regime of the peace process, has failed to deliver. The standard of living has come down, the GDP has come down, unemployment has risen, poverty is to be found everywhere, people are on strike.
Abuse of human rights.
The whole business. Of course, not as much abuse of human rights. Terrible. With the support of the United States, by the way. And as an American Palestinian, I'm deeply ashamed that when Al Gore went to Jericho in 1996, in March of 96, he recommended the state security courts. This is all done at the behest of the Israelis and the Americans who want Arabs put in jail in order to satisfy their security problems. In the meantime, there's 1 million Palestinians inside Israel, citizens of Israel, who are treated as blacks in South Africa were. We have an apartheid regime. This is a religious state that rules people by religion. If you're a Jew, you have privileges. If you're not a Jew, if you're Christian or Muslim and an Arab, you have lesser rights, or you have no rights. So this is an untenable situation.
You see this in far bleaker terms now than you ever have, don't you?
Yes, I'm afraid the situation has gotten now where there is a polarization of opinion on both sides. The Israelis have this, in my opinion, ludicrous idea that they are being victimized. They're one of the most powerful armies in the world. They have 200 nuclear warheads. They have the largest air force in the region, the largest and most powerful army. And
but that's why they say they haven't done 1/1,000,000th of what they could do. So when Arafat says you've declared war on us,
I'm sure
it's not true, is it?
I'm sure we're grateful for that. What they failed to do, which has been the policy from the very beginning, is the hope that in the end the Palestinians would give up and go away. After 50 years of being beaten on the head, Palestinians would say, okay, we'll accept anything. And I think Arafat almost did that in 1993. He realized that the only way he could continue was to try and work with them. And look what it got him. It got him very little. And before his own people, at the end, he had to level with them or show them. And he couldn't. He couldn't sign the final document, which would have literally sold them down the river. And I'm glad his common sense stopped him, because he had to go back and deal with them. And what was required of him was essentially to annul the Palestinian cause and the fact that we've been, without compensation, without restitution, the oldest refugee and largest refugee problem in the world today. Unresolved.
So who is there to speak to?
There's obviously
when Prime Minister Barak talks about a partner for peace, who is there to speak to among the Palestinians?
I think now his man is Arafat. There's no one else. There's a younger generation of Palestinians. I think we need a period of evolution. I think we certainly need a commission of inquiry. We need a force to protect Palestinians who are virtually unarmed compared to the armor and air force of the Israelis. And I think we need an honest broker, which could only, in my opinion, be the UN. I don't think the US can play the role, because in US politics, Israel is a sacred cow. You cannot criticize it. Hillary Clinton's wife, is running for senator in New York. A year ago, before she ran, she said the only solution is a Palestinian state. She's been forced to eat her words on a daily basis. She and her competitor in the Republican Party, who are competing for the Senate seat in New York, are in a daily contest to prove who is more pro-Israel and anti-Arab. It is that simple.
Who can end the violence now? Who can stop,
I think the UN
can.
I think the UN can. An international, as opposed to an American.
What you're suggesting, a peace force?
I think something like that, a peace force, yes.
It's come to that?
I think the Palestinians need protection, absolutely. The problem is that the last time there was an international peace force run by the United States was in Lebanon in 1982. We had the massacres of Sabra and Shatila. They left too early.
Palestinians don't need protection if they stay in their houses and don't riot on the streets, do they?
Oh, you mean eat grass and
no, I mean don't attack Israeli border positions.
But it's not Israeli border positions. It is Israeli occupation forces who are deep in Palestinian territory. That is.
Well, one was attacked actually as the agreement was being signed in Sharm el-Sheikh.
Good. I think it's important to attack occupation forces. Wouldn't you attack an occupation force in your country? Of course you would.
You've changed.
I haven't changed
This was
at all.
the man who was preaching reconciliation.
I am
over
still
the years.
preaching reconciliation.
Where's the reconciliation?
You can't have reconciliation.
You're asking people to attack border posts?
I'm asking people to attack occupation forces. Absolutely. I'm not a pacifist. I deeply believe that occupation, apartheid, has to be resisted. And this is what we've been given from the Israelis. I certainly believe in reconciliation, and I'm trying to think of a way that rises a little bit beyond the...
But you're openly advocating violence.
No, I'm not openly advocating violence. I'm simply saying that it is one's duty as a citizen to resist occupation. It may be non-violent resistance, certainly. I'm for that, if it can be done. I'm for any kind of violence that will resist occupation and apartheid. It was the ANC position.
So the stone throwing is fine. The stone throwing is fine.
I'm not interested in the details of it. I'm not in a position to
attacking holy Jewish sites.
No, I'm
okay.
against attacking anything. I'm simply saying that occupation and apartheid have to be resisted by whatever means bring about their end. And if
that's the same thing as legitimizing violence,
it's not legitimizing. It is simply not. It is delegitimizing apartheid. It is delegitimizing occupation, and that's the main political struggle for us. And we haven't done enough.
Why? Because the politics haven't worked.
No. This is part of politics. This is a political campaign that we haven't. And this is where I think Arafat was wrong. I think we have to appeal to the world, and I think certainly the drama of the last 2 weeks has shown that what you are dealing with is not a peace process, but a continuation of the occupation.
Barak was the Prime Minister
repackaging
the Palestinians wanted.
No, well, what are you telling me, that Palestinians voted for him? I mean, most Palestinians can't vote anywhere because of their condition as refugees.
You certainly didn't want Netanyahu, did you?
Well, I certainly don't want any of them myself. I'm not a Israeli citizen.
But it was the best chance, wasn't it?
Well, history is very dynamic.
He came to power on a mandate to settle, to make a settlement.
Yes, one that suited Israel's interests, which may not necessarily coincide with Palestinian interests. Therefore,
he put his own political position at risk.
Well, he's a poor politician. I mean, he's a man, in my opinion, without sufficient imagination, without the compassion and generosity that is in the end going to be needed. Because what Israel has to do, Tim, is to acknowledge its responsibility for the disaster that we call the Nakba of 1948. No Israeli leader, a few Israeli individuals have, but no Israeli leader has faced up to that past. And you cannot deal with a dispossessed people that is still alive, still there, still watching the ruins of their own history parade before your eyes and say, we have no responsibility.
You keep going back to history.
Yeah,
what
history,
about the present day?
Well,
you said yourself that the territories,
the present
there's
day,
no exclusive historical claim.
No,
either by Palestinians or Jews.
My
you said that
solution is to
yourself.
share. My solution is coexistence and sharing. And that's why I say that the Israelis have not acknowledged that part of history which resulted in the destruction of Palestine.
And the offer that was on the table at Camp David, that wasn't an attempt to share?
History is a way of understanding the present. You can't shave it off and say it's not relevant. Of course it's relevant. And of all people, the Jews have the most to say about history because their history has been such a tragic one. And so it's really absolutely symmetrical. If there was some way to bring about some understanding and recognition and acknowledgement by Israeli Jews of the fact that they are living on Arab land, that every Israeli house or Israeli settlement, Moshe Dayan said it openly in 1976, we are perfectly aware, he said, that when we came here, this was an Arab country. Every house we live in was once an Arab house. And therefore, this history, which is buried and invisible, has to be made known. And there has to be some responsibility for it. And that is the way I think there can be reconciliation and understanding. It doesn't mean that the Jews have to leave. It doesn't mean that the Jews are all to be destroyed or moved away. It means that there's a common history of suffering and this self-destruction in this instance.
In July, on the Lebanese border, you were photographed throwing a stone at an Israeli border post. Why?
Because it was a moment of exaltation. First of all, there was nobody there.
You throw stones for exaltation?
Yes, to the end of an Israeli occupation, absolutely. I think it was a common gesture. A lot of people were doing it there, and there was nobody in sight.
Do you regret it?
No, I don't regret it. Not at all.
Regret the controversy? Regret the fact that it's
controversies come and go.
Spoils your reputation in Israel, perhaps?
Perhaps, I don't know. I did a big interview in Israel in August with Haaretz, and I discussed it there. I'm perfectly capable of discussing it.
What signal do you think that sends? I mean, here you are, the best-known Palestinian commentator in the world today, and you're throwing a stone.
I think what signal I'm sending is what I'm saying, and what I've been saying for 30 years, that there can be no peace or reconciliation between Israelis and Palestinians unless there's an understanding of the other's history. And the party that has suffered the most requires from the person who's caused that suffering, or the party that has caused that suffering, some acknowledgement. The denial will not do.
It requires also the renunciation of violence, finally. By the Palestinians, doesn't it?
I think if you categorize it as violence, you must talk about the greater violence. The greater violence is that of the Israeli army. There's no comparison. Throwing a stone is not the same as having a helicopter gunship fire missiles at civilians from the air. This is the kind of immorality of war that the United States has led the world in, and I'm afraid the Israelis have learnt the lesson all too well. Firing tanks at
Israelis
villages.
claim it was a proportionate response, albeit condemned by the Security Council.
Right. Condemned by the Security Council, condemned by the entire world. This is something that cannot be tolerated. Enormously powerful armies
You don't
firing
think the
at civilians.
Palestinians are using these images, that these are the images they want, to put themselves in that position, to show themselves as the losers, to focus world attention on them? You don't
Using
think they're
the
doing
images
that?
how? I'm not quite sure I understand your meaning. You mean they expose themselves to death so they can appear on British television? I think you must take them for more fools than they could ever possibly be. These are people in the line of fire. These are people actually heroically resisting a brutal military occupation, which is without parallel in the late 20th and early 21st century. So I think, instead of admiring their heroism, by saying that they're inciting violence for no purpose whatever except to appear on television, is really a trivialization, a banalization of a truly horrendous situation. I think what one should be led to ask is, why is this happening? Why are people so desperate and so resistant against a regime of such brutality and such a denial of their rights to self-determination as to do this? I think that is the real question.
Edward Said, it's been a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.